Good morning. My name is Sydney Hamilton, and I am a sophomore at the American School of Milan. Today, I am introducing the future of retail today and tomorrow. Over the last couple of centuries, how we consume has changed drastically. With the arrival of the Industrial Revolution, mass consumption occurred for the first time with the arrival of department stores and replacing the merchants of the past. Then, almost concurrently, came the popularity of catalogs, most notably the Sears Roebuck catalog. Today, we have e-commerce, where I have no need to leave my home or wait for a bulky catalog in order to order everything that I could want or need. And to discuss retail without talking about its largest disruptor, Amazon, is impossible. Amazon and other firms like it have changed the very fundamentals of retail, and many companies are scrambling to keep up. This is today's shopping experience. I have a grocery store a block away from my home that has a variety of foods, and large department stores make one-stop shopping an expected convenience. Yet, I can order everything of all of life's necessities from my home. But what is the future of retail? It will no doubt continue to develop even faster with more personalization. With the innovation of technology, businesses will need accessible websites and more wireless payment methods in order to keep up, and shipping models will also have to change. How will it be done? What else is in store, and what impacts will this have? I'm sure you're just as excited as I am to hear what this panel has to say on the topic. Thank you.
Buongiorno tutte, and that's the extent of my Italian. It is a pleasure to be here as we focus on the future of retail, because that's where it begins and it ends. Today's session has not been rehearsed. It has not been staged. These retail experts are here to share their insights. Think of this as having an intimate conversation, a very frank, honest conversation that a few hundred of our friends are eavesdropping on. Today's session will also be live streamed on YouTube, and it'll be on the Seeds&Chips website where you can access it. I want to thank Marco and Sharon for giving us this opportunity to bring the retail voice, the challenges and opportunities to this year's Seeds&Chips conference. We are going to scare you. We're going to thrill you. We're going to excite you. We're going to challenge you with the opportunities that lay before all of us. Retailers today have an opportunity, and it's not just about buying it cheap, piling it high, and selling it cheap or cheaper than it costs them. Consumers want retailers today to curate for them, to verify ingredients and transparency, to take a stand on what's good and bad for both our taste buds and our planet. They want to have a relationship with retailers. We're in an era where the power has shifted from lobbyists in the food and retail world to the consumers, who have more power than ever before. And retailers are listening. I want to ask our retail panel to join me now. Each one will speak very briefly, about a minute or so, introduce themselves and their organization, and then for 4 minutes, talk about the future of food retail. That'll be our first 30 minutes. And then from there, a candid, no-holds-barred conversation where I and the other members of the panel may challenge each other and figure out how we get to the future faster. So with that, first up, Phil, if you could join us. Peter, Fabio, Stefan, Davida, and Fabio. So Phil, let's start with you. Who are you? Why are you here? And tell me about the future of food retail and what Specialty Food Association is doing about it.
I would love to. I'm Phil Kafarakis. I'm the president of the Specialty Food Association, and we're an association that represents 3,800 and growing makers, buyers, and the entire supply chain in the Americas and globally. You might know about us because we are the producers of the Fancy Food Show in the Americas, both in New York City and in San Francisco.
You know, I just realized something. They forgot to bring us water. And those of you that might have been here yesterday saw that Secretary Kerry needed water. So, can I have some water, please?
Uh-huh.
This is Yapi. Yapi has traveled throughout Milan about 200 kilometers or more. It is expanding into the US and into the EU. Come a little closer, Yapi. Come on. Don't be shy. Come a little closer. Okay, so let me pass out some water. We all know about delivery, and matter of fact, home delivery is expected in 2 years to be over $46 billion globally. So I want to thank Yapi for joining us here today. So Yapi, we have to get started, so why don't you go take a bow with everybody. No, go. We've got to get started with our panel. And Yapi will be around afterwards if you want to take a picture with Yapi. And can you imagine over 200 kilometers in Milan already? So thank you, Yapi. Okay. Peter. Now, Peter and I have met via Skype before. We've talked to each other at great length. And the reason we wanted Peter here is Peter's premise, and the rest of you are going to be very upset about this. Peter's premise is we don't need retailers. Tell me about you and INS.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Peter Fechenkov. I am co-founder of INS ecosystem. We are one of the leading disruptors in the retail and CPG industry among blockchain and crypto companies. We're building our own blockchain tailored specifically for the industry. And we're focusing on direct-to-consumer application of this blockchain that would connect grocery manufacturers directly with consumers. We raised slightly north of $40 million at the very end of last year. Our team is based in Amsterdam and Moscow, and we're working on the pilot that is due to happen in Amsterdam later this year. And yeah, Phil, this might sound ambitious or even scary, but we are seriously exploring this opportunity, and we believe in the future where manufacturers and consumers could get connected directly through third-party fulfillment providers. This would not necessarily mean that all of the retailers will be wiped out. We're more thinking about building a new independent channel that connects manufacturers and consumers. And blockchain technology plays a very important role into that. Blockchain enables all of the parties that don't know each other and don't trust each other to interact and transact together in a safe and more efficient way. So hundreds of manufacturers, thousands of consumers, hundreds of fulfillment providers, and other third-party providers would be able to connect in a network and potentially bypass retailers and wholesalers and other intermediaries, creating benefits for the industry, benefits for consumers, and benefits for CPG companies as well. And this is something similar that happened in the financial industry, with banks at certain point being strongholds of the industry, but now you have peer-to-peer lending. You have tons of companies that are disrupting parts of banks' business through blockchain and other technologies. And we believe this might happen to retailers. and this is something that we're working on.
So, Fabio, every day I wonder who's going to lead the world. Is it Amazon or Google? And I know what you're going to say. And what I find fascinating every year is when Google does its forecast about food. So tell me about that and what you see for food retailing in the future.
So I think it's a tough question. And so very quickly, I am Fabio Vaccarona said. I am the managing director of Google Italy. And I am a member of Google Europe, Middle East, and Africa board since a few years. So I think that something that used to happen to me prior to joining Google is that to a certain extent, I was implicitly biased in undervaluing the real power of digital transformation and how now is really affecting any kind of industry within the world. When you are not grew up in digital as I am, because I was coming from more, let me say, core, traditional, different businesses, you tend to think to digital and to technology companies as members of a specific industry. Reality is that in the moment while I'm talking, we have more than 3 billion and 600 million people online this moment, today, now, this morning. But even more interesting is that by the end of 2020, it is easily predictable that we will have at least 6 billion people online. So if the magnitude of change is of the dimension I'm trying to describe, you have three consequences, and then I come specifically very quickly to your point. The first consequence is that any kind of profession, any kind of job, any kind of industry you are currently working upon, you are going to be a digital business anytime soon. Because in a world in which you have 6 billion people connected online with an average of 6-7 connectivity devices per head, there's no way you are not going to become a digital company. And what do I mean by that? A company whose specific competitive advantage or relative sustainability is going to be grounded into the use of information and data. That is going to happen to food, is going to happen to retail, whether if you are a car manufacturer or a media company. The amount of information we will be capable of processing thanks to the new technologies, and even more important, the fact that we will be playing differently from what you might be thinking in a much more open and level playing field, because certain technology until yesterday available only to big corporations like ours or Amazon or Facebook or whoever you might think, will be available to the smallest of African hospitals, to the smallest of, I don't know, Southern America schools and so on and so forth. So here is the good news, or the potential threat if you want. In a world which is going to become even more hyper-connected, and we have seen nothing yet, I think anything that has to do with food, retail, consumer being put at the center will give us tremendous opportunities to solve some of the biggest challenges we are facing today. And to a certain extent, good ideas that are grounded into technology and the use of digital are going to scale up on a worldwide basis with a speed and a potential relevance that has been not imaginable until yesterday. So you say, this guy is working for Google, so he has to declare some kind of technological optimism. But I am sincerely convinced, being an Italian person, even prior of being a Google manager, we are the country of food, of course, to a certain extent, and we also are the country that is the second largest manufacturing power in Europe after Germany, and we have a vast array of amazing small companies. Today, these small companies will become, whatever the industry, digital companies, much more international than before, because even if dwarfs compared to traditional multinationals, they will be capable of exploiting global connectivity in platforms. They will be capable to use the same artificial intelligence, machine learning available to the big giants until just a few years ago. So under this extent, I think there's plenty to do and change when it comes to food. We will see anything coming in terms of big disruptive ways when it comes to retail. But I think the future ahead is interesting.
Interesting is a good word, and we'll stick with that in a second. Stefan, when I look at Carrefour, I think most of us think about hypermarkets. But today, Carrefour is being very innovative. You have supermarkets, you have convenience stores, you just opened up a facility here, a store here in Milan, which has what we in the US call a grocerant, which is a full bar. You had an event there last night. Tell us a little bit about you and about where Carrefour is going for the future of retail.
Okay. So I'm Stéphane Koum. I'm in charge of Carrefour Italy. Since 25 years on the company in China, Malaysia, Singapore, Turkey. Because if we are speaking about the future of retail, we need to speak about worldwide aspect of retail. And when we speak worldwide, to speak about what just said Fabio, each country has its own DNA in terms of food culture. And when I'm speaking about DNA, I'm speaking about company too. Carrefour is 50 years of history. The DNA of Carrefour is on hypermarket. We were the first one to develop hypermarket format all over the world. Today we have 30 countries, 400,000 people, and 12,700 stores. And we can see since 20 years around that the DNA of Carrefour is not anymore hypermarket, but more multi-format, convenience store, supermarket, and now we are working on e-commerce. It's clear that everything is going very fast. Customer wants everything immediately. He needs to be connected. He wants to know everything about every product. And the future is not only digital, because you can see this world is a world where people want to speak. They need to have a center of life where stores can become a way for people to speak each other. Is finished the way where you are going to make your shopping and you go home. Now our target is to create restaurant where you can eat, taste, take a good time with your friends, meet other people, and make your shopping. So the omni-channel of Carrefour is one of our priority. On the respect of the food is what we call the food transition. We need to be much more clear about what we are selling to the customers. We can see in each country we have some nutritional problem, we have some product problems, and the target of Carrefour is to clarify the quality of the product we are selling and to ensure minimum revenue to the producer. This is a new way to work for Carrefour too. Our target is to ensure to the producer, to the farmers, a minimum level of revenue in order to create a partnership with them.
Davida, when you look at a supermarket through your lens, you look at it very differently. And when I think about in the US, the number of product recalls that we have when it comes to produce items. Right now, we have a huge recall from romaine lettuce, and the USDA cannot discover the source of the problem. You have a vision to change all that for supermarkets. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm Davide Roncaglia, a project director in Coop Alleanza 3.0. Coop Alleanza is the biggest factory of Coop world in Italy. We have 400 of a supermarket, hypermarket, 10,000 square meter, or little supermarket, 100 meters. So what we have to do to our customers is different in a situation that are not the same. You you asked me about vegetables, about an important answer. If we think how we can imagine the future of the retail, we can think about technology, we can think about e-commerce, but also I suppose that it's important to think about the quality of the vegetables. We are working about an answer in this direction. Now we are defining our new project, and we will start this summer with a hydroponic greenhouse on the roof of a supermarket. In this direction, I think we can give good answers to our customer about freshness, about knowing where products come from, because we imagine to have a glass elevator with a strong relation with our food that is Metro Zero.
What I've heard from both of you, and Fabio, I'd like you to expand on this a little bit, is about that shopper experience, whether it's going into a Carrefour, having a meal, having a glass of wine and shopping, or having the experience of fresh foods by just going to the top of the store and picking your own tomatoes and your fruits and vegetables. Talk to me about how important is that retail experience? Because as we saw with Yappy, you know, which stands for, by the way, your autonomous Pony Express, are we headed in that direction where everything's just going to be automated?
To be honest, I can say that this experience is absolutely necessary, because we heard today also that the retail as we know it today will not longer exist in the future. And this is totally right. The whole business model and everything around it will change. Just think about the basic functions of the retail model in the past. There were the pricing function, the assortment function, the distribution function, the marketing function. It's all gone now. It's taken over also by other players. So the biggest source and the biggest value proposition we as a retailer have is trust. Trust in quality, trust in food safety, trust in transparency, trust in traceability. And so, in my point of view, it's absolutely necessary to discover new technologies which enable us to build this kind of trust to the consumer. Not only when it comes to customer orientation, that we take the customer as the only point of focus, but also that we give him orientation, that we give him curated assortments, that we help them in a world where everything goes faster and more speed and where everything is digitalized, etc., that he has a reference point where he gets the cleanest food, where he gets really pure food and a pure food experience. And vertical integration is, in my point of view, absolutely important. Vertical integration means for us as a retailer that we are looking not only in the distributional part of the retail model, but also think about how we can show processes, how, for example, food is produced in a store, like, for example, roasteries, or, for example, that we are cutting and processing food in our stores. And this is, for me, part of this experience. But the overall level is built trust. And I think if we are talking about the digitalization of food retail, where everything gets more and more anonymous, and where I'm sitting in front of my mobile phone, in front of my PC, or I have a device at home, nobody helps me when it comes to build my right basket, or how I can really set up something. And I think food is a very, very emotional topic, and you need the connection to the people, the connection to restaurant owners. You need the connection to store employees, to people that show you what is the right assortment. And this is where I'm not technical averse. I'm the opposite. I'm very technical open, but I try to think of how can we use new technologies to enable this food experience and bring it to the customers. Because you see it also in the increase of the sales in the restaurant business. The people go outside, they see it as a social happening. And this is where I see also the retail in the future. It's more like a social happening. And of course, I can all the commodity products, I can buy them online. I get everything that I need on a day-by-day basis, low involvement products, etc. But to get the best cheese, to get the real good fresh product, I need to have this experience, because it shows me, and this is something where I think consumers becoming more and more value-driven buying customers, that they are really going into these slots. And that's why we have founded NX Food. NX Food is the unit for food tech and food innovation within Metro AG. I'm in charge of NX Food, and we help startups, we help new food tech companies to have customer validation at the point of sale, to discover the right go-to-market strategies and to find out in which way they can really communicate about their product. We did it in the past with our in-store farming installation, the first hydroponic vertical farm in a store. We did it with insect-based pasta as a first retailer in Germany, where we brought it into the market. And we do it always in a very, very partnership way with our with the companies, with the startups. We help them to find the right go-to-market strategy. And I think it's absolutely important that you have a very good partnership there and a very good relationship to your suppliers and to your customers on the other hand. But otherwise, the whole system doesn't work.
I'd like to build on that. Last week, Walmart announced that in China, they have a new store that has 8,000 SKUs, that in partnership with JD.com, they're going to be making deliveries within 2 kilometers in 29 minutes or less. Facebook announced just yesterday that they're now using augmented reality to turn chats into shopping destinations. Alexa, in my opinion, and I say this respectfully, could very well be the #1 supermarket chain in the world, where I can just talk to Alexa and I've predetermined that I'm going to buy my goods from Metro or Co-op or Carrefour, and they're delivered. We're at the dawning of a time where we're going to have the Internet of all things in our kitchens, and we'll have scales as refrigerator shelves and scanners built into the door. And every time I take my milk in and out, it will know how much I've consumed. I've told it I never want to run out of my milk. So as a result, that order will be sent to Carrefour and it'll be delivered. So in this era of technology, Phil, I'd like you to start with this. How do retailers and manufacturers, and especially those artisan brands that Specialty Food Association represents, in light of what you heard about the experience that's so important, how do they cope with all this technology?
Well, as a community of entrepreneurs that are trying to set the trends, particularly in solving problems, because that's how our people come to market, it's about how this panel is set up. You can see the retail, brick and mortar side of the panel, the technology side of the panel. It's a community that has to integrate. I think what was said earlier, transparency is the future, whether it's in the supply chain, whether it's in the information we get. The interesting thing about transparency for the maker is as you build your information on me all these years through my interaction with you as a retailer, a food service operator, when I go into convenience stores, what happens when I change? What happens when all the predictive modeling that you built on me as a 30-year-old, 40-year-old, I get to 55 and all of a sudden I have a gluten problem, and all of a sudden I have a lactose problem? What happens to all of that? And that's the point of where the mystery of the future lies. And I still believe the passion is in the food, in being able to sit, touch it, smell it, feel it. And yes, I think one day you'll be able to come out of your apartment and your home and go into the supermarket, and that's the place where your community meets. But I think the big thing for our community is to understand the integration of transparency. Specialty Foods has 4 characteristics. It's the authenticity of the quality and where the product came from, the integrity of the process that you make the product. It's not mass produced. It has to do with kettle cook, stone ovens, wood burning. there's an integration of that. There's packaging, depending on the channel that you're in, that's required. And then the most important thing we haven't touched on yet, which is the thesis of everything we do here with the Seeds and Chips people, is doing good. How you treat your people, how you treat your community, your values, not the value of your product and your price point. So as these things come together, transparency will continue to drive it, and I'm very hopeful in all of the technology that's being delivered that it's balanced in how we individuals use it, and it's done in a way that makes it easier for me to understand what I should do for my gluten problem and still eat great Italian pasta.
So help me, for all of you, understand this, because I hear what Phil's saying. I agree with it. I hear about the technology. I agree with that. The number one trend that we have seen globally is the trend called mindfulness, where people are becoming more aware of what they're eating, more aware of the environment, everything that Seeds and Chips is all about. How do we reconcile this use of technology and the tactile need for that fabulous pasta and so on? Peter, I recall you telling me, I think it was your uncle and your grandfather who started out, and where you got the idea for INS is in Russia. There was an economic problem. They were in the grain business, I believe. Cereals, and they didn't have an infrastructure to get the cereals to consumers because they weren't getting paid by the distributors. So your family just went door to door selling cereals.
Yeah, so my grandfather and his associates were going to market stalls throughout the country and selling cereals and flour and other stuff when during the early 1990s, when the retail industry in the Soviet Union and Russia was completely underdeveloped, and they did direct-to-consumer approach. They would tailor their pitch depending on how a consumer looked like. Yeah, and I feel it's all about different channels and connecting with consumers through different channels. And there is this extremely important experiential side of retail, as we discussed throughout this panel. You could not replace supermarket, you could not replace convenience store, you could not replace the experience of smelling apples. But from the other side, there are a number of new and disruptive channels that are being developed by retailers or by outside companies. And I feel, in addition to transparency and mindfulness trends, what's extremely important is personalization. And that has been one of the key premises behind Amazon. When you go to Amazon website, you feel good because it knows everything about you. It knows what kind of goods you are tempted to purchase. And that helps a lot. And I feel that's going to be a very important trend in terms of enticing consumers to your stores.
But isn't that scary for certain people? And let me throw that to you. I mean, when we look at the security breaches, we look at everything, does Google, Amazon, Facebook, do they know a little too much?
So I'm the one of difficult questions today, so I was expecting that to a certain extent. Well, first of all, let me just point out a thing that might be slightly misunderstood before. I'm not predicting a world in which all virtuality will be taken over against our physical experiences. So we'll still feel the smell of our spaghetti courgette or opening, the box of apples. The point being the following: the speed and the magnitude of change is so fast that a kind of mistake that we have to resist is to see digital, as I said before, as a different industry, because it's an error that we tend to replicate within our companies. Because we tend to see digital as the number new or coming function, which gets replicated when we look at our consumer, because we tend to think that our consumer has a physical part of his experience, which is the grounding one, the original one. And then now there is the new added virtual reality, information-driven, digital technology kind of experience. So we grew up as manager thinking there are these kind of differences. There aren't. At least there aren't anymore. And the idea is that we will coming up with a consumer that structurally, at least in this moment of change, is way ahead of the companies that have to serve him when it comes to conceiving digital. Consumers are certainly more knowledgeable about digital than the organization that have to serve them, and certainly more willing to experiment. There is a sort of entrepreneurial managerial schizophrenia. When we are in our boardrooms and thinking about our service models, we have the hat of the manager, which is by definition a very conservative hat. That can sound as a paradox, but it is, especially in change and risky times. When we exit our boardrooms and our companies, we immediately start to behave like a proper hyper-connected and hyper-digitalized consumer. We check our smartphone 200 times a day. It's the last thing we do prior to go to bed in the evening. The first one we do when we wake up in the morning. It's easy predictable that these kind of objects will be quickly replacing, I don't know, the keys of our car, our wallets, the keys of our house. Just think about the transformative wave of wireless domotics which is going to come. When I said we will have 6 billion people connected online with an average of 6-7 devices, and we think about the Internet of Things, today the most emotional object we have is also one of the dumbest, digital speaking, which is the house. It's not connected yet. So I can reassure you that we will not be running out of milk anymore. But certainly we will have to cope with a world in which consumers we will no longer make nor cognitive nor behavioral distinctions between a physical touch point or a virtual touch points. And our job will be to integrate those experiences. So like it or not, Google or not, Amazon or not, Facebook or not, I'll give you a quite recent data that I saw about Italian consumers. The number of information sources taken into consideration by the Italian consumer for an average purchase over the last 5 years has tripled. So it was around 6-7 information sources. Of course, it's a big average. You have durable goods and more instinctive emotional buys, which requires less, let me say, information processing. That number of information sources, whether they are online or offline, has just tripled. And all that availability of data on one side, it needs the highest level of protection when it comes, of course, to privacy, clear trade-offs about the things that we get to know about you and what you get in exchange. So that's one of the big challenges we have. But my prediction is that we will not have in that only as technological companies. We will have that as any kind of company, because my prediction is that any company will become a micro multinational, if it is not big enough, but certainly a digital company. So to the extent through which the new, for example, European legislation, the so-called GDPR, will be entering by the 25th of May, I'm seeing and meeting now a lot of entrepreneurs and key chief execs that are starting to think and deal with privacy issues, because a world full of technological opportunities, a world full of consumers asking questions, and having grown up with the capability of processing that amount of information prior to make a choice, will make classical issues typical of the high-tech company common to any kind of industry. And that's where my prediction, for the good or for the bad, will be coming to life.
So let me turn to our retailers. And how do you deal with this schizophrenia, where we know that consumers want more fresh, they want more prepared foods, they want to be able to go into a greenhouse and pick the freshest possible, and technology, whether it's ordering, whether it's delivery. How do you deal with that schizophrenia? Who wants to go first?
When we are speaking about worldwide technologies, every time we're thinking about the big companies like Walmart, Carrefour, but in each market where I work, in each countries, the first players are local or regional. So even if you can have a fantastic assortment on your website, customers want to know and to choose exactly the product who are done locally. The localism will be one of the key of the success of the retailers. In Italy, 25% of the business is done by localism. It's what we call a kilometro zero, is what we call the relation with the producer. People now, customers, they want to know the producer. They love to have on the packaging the picture of the producer of milk. The guy who prepare the meat. We want to have this story with the product. And digital for company like Carrefour is a support to continue to improve the retail omnichannel. When we make some restructuration of stores, when you are doing 50, 70% of growth, I tell myself, for sure, customers, they want this relation with our employees, with other customers. And we need to work with all companies like Google in order to know better expectation of our customers. One customer, one voice, one answer. More we will go in detail of this knowledge, more we will have reason to invite him on the store and to have dedicated assortment to give to him. So the selection, the exclusivity of each company will help customers and retailers to continue together. And it's the reason why you can see that we are coming back to department with services. In 1990s, you couldn't find one butchery with services. We cancel everything. Why? Because only the price, and customer will have a knowledge to choose by himself. Now, we return back to the service because customer trust his butcher. He wants to speak with him. It's not only a point of trust, it's a point of speak with people. And I come back again to the center of life. We need to have not only employees dedicated on their department, we need to have employees who love customers, who love to share their impression with them. This is my dream. We are working on it. It's totally new. We cannot underestimate internet, e-commerce. We are growing on it, but we need to give art, passion, and love to this relation with customers. If you have one internet who gives you only information, but without giving you what you were speaking initially concerning the cereals that you were selling door by door, me, when I was young, I was going to the farmer to buy my milk. And this gives a relation totally different because you imagine this story. Retailers need to create this story from the producer to the consumer.
So you're not going to buy your groceries on Alexa?
I will answer you later.
Davide.
Yeah, I think that the important thing, the point is to start from the quality of what I eat, what I put inside myself. And I know that we have in our pocket an object that put us in relation with all the world, that let us to have everything. But that object that I put inside myself is the most important thing for me, for growing better, for living a lot. And I can tell our customers that it's good if I know that it has done a few road, few street, kilometer zero, or 0 meter, because in this way I suppose that my answer is stronger. And in this way, I can tell you that you can believe in my company, because for me it's important the quality of what you put inside yourself.
We are what we eat. And Phil, I want to go back to something that Stefan said about the story of products, the authenticity of products, which is very important to them and very important to your members. So let me ask you about that schizophrenia between, telling a story for your members, getting the credibility, doing the authenticity, you are what you eat, making sure that it's the best possible, and how do they deal in this digital world with Google Home or Alexa?
Well, the biggest component in success of our members is the passion they have for what they've created. They're solving their own problem because they can't find it in mass market or big brands. So as they create the passion for what they have, of course, the beauty of our community is leveraging the transparency in technology and being able to get immediately to the consumer, which is with the emergence of specialty foods. It's a $128 billion business today. It's about 15% of what's sold in the Americas in grocery, but it's going into food service, it's going into convenience stores. If you go to Nordstrom, Macy's, you go upstairs, you find food. They do it because of the abilities of this great technology that's leveraged. It also is an opportunity for them because food is found everywhere now. We are agnostic to the channels. If you go into a place like Bed Bath & Beyond that sells nothing but materials for your bathrooms and your bedroom, the first thing you'll see is the international food section with all these wonderful products. So the food is everywhere, and our community is absorbing the ability to integrate with retailers, integrate with technology, and get immediately to the consumer because the story they tell is the passion that built them on those 4 characteristics I described earlier.
Fabio, how are you dealing with this schizophrenia? Because it seems like you're right in the middle of it.
Yeah. For us, all the small companies are the most important ones because they are developing, and this is especially in the startup area, one of the key identity points of a startup. They are developing their products along to customer demands. So, and then there is a point, okay, we as retailer, we have direct customer access, and so we bring them both together. So in the past 3 months, 200 startups have applied over our platform because they want to have customer access. And we were also very happy as Annex Foods that we won Germanwings and Eurowings as an international partner, that we will provide on all flights products from out of our assortment or from our startup pool, let's say it like this, to validate their products on a 3 months basis and then to get it into the market. And I want to add just one point, because we are talking here about personalization and we are talking about that we are creating everything around the customer. And I think this is one of the most important trends in the future. But on the other hand, we see also a contra trend that the people become more and more food hunters. So they are really looking to something that isn't recommended to them, that it's not seen in the internet essay, and they find it and they are really happy about it. Food hunters. So they publish it, they show it to their friends, and it's part of their identity again to show, hey, look what I've discovered, and this is the newest niche product. This is found somewhere behind somewhere, and this is also something that we see that the people get more and more into the topic of food, and this is what you were referring to. It's a mindfulness that it's coming more and more into also the consumer's mind, and we try to find this kind of products also in the technological sector by teaming up with the German Institute for Food Technology, the DIL, that's also here at the Seeds&Chips, or with the University of Wageningen or the Kinneret Institute in Israel, to really be there where new IP, where new food technology is implemented and is developed, and then we help them to go into the market, and this is what we are doing there.
So I'm hearing a lot about passion for food.
Just a brief comment on that, because the most important component as we see all this coming together is the legislation that's happening across the world, and the restrictions and the definitions made by politicians and communities that don't understand what's happening. And the academic institutions and the other institutions, the consumer institutions, the research is something that we should really absorb and make a bigger part of our community, because the legislative environment across the world is going to be a big barrier. Just thought it fit into that.
No, absolutely,
excellent point.
absolutely, because this is what we are facing on a daily level, and this is, of course, startups are speedboats, but sometimes they are not fitting to the requirements, and then we take them, help them to get everything along this requirements. It's absolutely important, yeah.
So I'm hearing a lot about passion for food. I'm hearing a lot about technology. One of the things that we're starting to see, and this will be my last question, and then I'm going to ask all of you one last question to answer. If anybody has any comment about now the role of DNA testing for food. So I can take a test from either Habit or 23andMe and find out what foods I should or should not consume. So when we see that technology, does that take some of the fun, the passion out of it? Because now, my DNA is saying, don't have gluten and just eat salmon or whatever else. What happens with that? Anybody want to take a shot at that?
I think in an ideal world, your body says what it's healthy for you, but this is another topic. No, I think it should be always some kind of guideline. And there's a company, it's called Vita Mojo, a restaurant company from London, and they are doing it in a very, very good way because the products are very, very tasteful, and you can do a DNA check because they have teamed up with some kind of DNA company that helps them there. And I think they are really, really good in what is there. But I totally get your point. I think within this ecosystem, and when it gets really critical to your health, then of course you should get closer to it. But as long as not the case, I should always take it as a guideline.
So Fabio, I'm going to start our last question with you, and then we'll just go right down the line, and everyone has about 1 minute to answer this question. The question is, when you look at the future of food retail, what is your concern where we're going? What keeps you up at night about the future of food retail? Fabio?
What keeps me at night? I think, having said that I don't think that the retail business will not longer exist in 10 to 15 years. It keeps me awake that we need to work on the topic of customer education. We need to make them, educate more about food. We need to have a clear interface to what customer needs and how to educate them about new food trends. And this is something that's, for me, absolutely important. And having also said that, this is something where the trust is the most power source that we have as a retailer, because we are already established in this segment, and we always should use new technology to underline our level of trust and to really go in the right dialogue with all the players in the ecosystem. Because in the future, the consumer will be the point of sale, not the physical or brick and mortar location. The consumer is the point of sale, and we need to create the right ecosystem around it and having the best dialogue on fulfill our 2050 goals. Yes.
Davida?
Yeah. We are looking for a good answer for our customer, good products, and we want that they will be happy. So at the same time, we work about cheapness, also that quality, but it's difficult. And a reason that makes me unhappy is that this kind of problem can go on a worker's shoulder. That's all.
Stefan, what's keeping you up at night?
The future of retail, in 20 years, you will continue to visit Carrefour because the physical store will continue to exist. It will move. 20 years ago, it was different. Today, we already propose different formats, and 20 years later, it will be really much more different because we spoke about communities. It's clear that now customers want to be much more informed about each product that he's buying. First. Second point, customer is a part of different communities. Don't forget, one community, which is one of the most important all over the world, is a community of customers who search promotion because they have difficulties to finish the month with enough money. In Italy, we have still 30% of our turnover done by promotion. So we can dream about a better world, about traceability, about producer, but at the end we have still a lot of people around the world who have difficulties to feed. And one of our community is a promotion too. And all this knowledge of different communities will be thanks to the big data, thanks to support of beautiful companies like Google, and we have to work together in order to have better knowledge of each customers and give a perfect answer to each customer.
Fabio, what keeps you up at night?
Well, I have to say, when it comes to this big opportunity I've tried to describe, applied to the fantastic producers and manufacturers we have all over in Italy, is that I have to admit now it's catching up, I would say quickly, but I think that our community of entrepreneurs and companies has been slightly shy and reluctant in really thinking about their digital future and the opportunities that digital is offering, specifically to a country like ours. Because if you take a look to us, as I said before, we have the second largest, biggest number of manufacturing companies in Europe, just after Germany. No other European market is as proficient as we are in creating those companies. Certainly the world of food and the food experience and the internationalization of the made in Italy products is one of the fantastic potentials we are sitting upon. But consider, for example, one trend which already took up quite significantly elsewhere, which is the one of e-commerce or online transactions. At the end of the day, you still got a lot of Italian entrepreneurs thinking that online is not yet quite there, that Italian consumers are not that willing to buy online, while the reality is that Italians go online as French people, as Spanish people, but the reality now is that in 80% of the cases, they are buying online from non-Italian manufacturers and producers. So the whole thing about, for example, e-commerce today is entirely on the supplied side, not on the demand side. So my worry, what keeps me awake at night, is that we are sitting on one of the biggest global business revolutions ever. It's a very specific and fortunate revolution for Italian companies, because we have the brand, we have the capability, we have the craftsmanship, we have the heritage, we have the tradition, we have the everything. It's very difficult to cope with us in certain industries. And now we have a fantastic, the most powerful, imaginative and visible communication window and distribution facility ever. And we seem from time to time to be reluctant to jump on that to the full extent. So I would like my country to move more towards a gigantic opportunity of having 6 billion people wanting to buy made in Italy stuff online. Okay?
Yeah, for me it would be just the sheer size of the industry and its traditional nature that forms a substantial barrier for innovation. So we already have self-driving Teslas and we have robots that bring us water, but we still push carts in the stores. We form lines at the checkout. We have bacteria in spinach. So what I'm worried is that all of the exciting innovation that's happening throughout the industry stays in the form of pilots and some smaller applications and doesn't get rolled out on a global scale. And I'd like to see more of that going forward.
And Phil, with the last word.
For our community, as you heard here, I think it comes down to the power of assortment. Where is the power of assortment? Who has that? Is it commingled? Is it cooperative? I hope it is, because the most entrepreneurial people in the world are trying to get their products to market. And where does the power of assortment lay in the future?
Thank you all so much. Please give our panel a great round of applause. Terrific insights. And don't forget, it'll be on Seeds and Chips YouTube channel. Please share it with your friends. And if you have any questions, I'm sure many of our panelists will be happy to help you. And also, you can have a photo with Yappy. So thanks so much. Appreciate it.